Have you ever felt the need to completely cut someone out of your life? Like not just taking a step back, but slamming the door shut and throwing away the key? Well, if you're an INFJ personality type, you might know this feeling all too well. Today, we're diving deep into the world of INFJ and exploring the 7 times when they're forced to use their infamous door slam technique. Buckle up, folks, this is going to be one emotional roller coaster. All right, let's kick things off by talking about what exactly the INFJ door slam is. Picture this: you're an INFJ known for being caring, intuitive, and always putting others first. But there comes a point when even the most patient and understanding person reaches their limit. That's where the door slam comes in. It's not just ghosting or taking a break, it's a complete shutdown, cutting off all ties with someone who's crossed a line one too many times. Now, you might be wondering, why would someone so compassionate resort to such a drastic measure? Well, my friends, that's exactly what we're here to uncover. INFJ don't door slam for fun or on a whim. It's a last resort, a self-preservation tactic that they use when they've been pushed to their absolute limits. And trust me, it takes a lot to get an INFJ to that point. So without further ado, let's dive into the 7 scenarios where INFJ find themselves forced to use the door slam technique. Get ready, because some of these might hit close to home. 1. When their trust is repeatedly betrayed. First up on our list is a biggie: trust betrayal. INFJ value honesty and authenticity above almost everything else. They're the type of people who wear their hearts on their sleeves and expect others to do the same. When they let someone into their inner circle, it's like giving them a VIP pass to their soul. So when that trust is broken not just once, but over and over again, that's when things start to get dicey. Imagine pouring your heart out to a friend, sharing your deepest fears and wildest dreams, only to find out they've been gossiping about you behind your back. Or trusting a partner with your whole heart, only to discover they've been unfaithful. For an INFJ, these betrayals cut deep, like really deep. They might forgive the first time, maybe even the second. But when it becomes a pattern, that's when the INFJ starts to feel like they're being taken for a fool. It's not just about the hurt feelings, though. INFJ are intuitive by nature, always looking for the deeper meaning behind people's actions. When someone repeatedly breaks their trust, it messes with their whole worldview. They start questioning their judgment, wondering if they can trust anyone at all. And let me tell you, that's a scary place for an INFJ to be. So what happens next? The INFJ might try to talk it out, give the person a chance to explain or make amends. But if the betrayals keep coming, that's when they start to build that wall. It's like they're adding brick after brick, until finally they're ready to slam that door shut. And once it's closed, good luck trying to pry it open again. 2. When their boundaries are constantly disrespected. Moving on to our second scenario: boundary stomping. Now, INFJ might seem like pushovers to some people. They're always ready to lend an ear, offer a shoulder to cry on, or go out of their way to help someone in need. But make no mistake, they've got boundaries, and when those boundaries are crossed, it's not a pretty sight. Picture this: an INFJ has a friend who's always calling them at odd hours, venting about their problems and expecting the INFJ to drop everything to help. At first, the INFJ is more than happy to be there for their friend. But as time goes on, they start to feel drained, like they're being used as an emotional dumping ground. They try to set some boundaries, maybe asking the friend to respect their work hours or to give them a heads up before unloading heavy stuff. But what happens when that friend just keeps pushing, keeps demanding more and more? Or how about a coworker who constantly takes credit for the INFJ's ideas? The INFJ might speak up, asking for recognition, only to be brushed off, or worse, gaslit into thinking they're being oversensitive. It's like being trapped in a never-ending game of tug-of-war, where the INFJ's needs and limits are constantly being pushed and pulled. The thing is, INFJ are natural people pleasers. They hate the idea of letting someone down or causing conflict. So, they might let these boundary violations slide for a while, hoping the other person will eventually get the hint. But there comes a point when enough is enough. When their kindness is mistaken for weakness, when their generosity is taken for granted, that's when the INFJ starts to feel like they're losing themselves. And let me tell you, an INFJ losing touch with their authentic self, that's a recipe for disaster. It's like watching a flower wilt in real time. They become shadows of their former selves, constantly stressed, anxious, and resentful. That's when they realize something's got to give, and unfortunately for the boundary stomper, it's usually the relationship that gets the axe. 3. When they're subjected to constant negativity. All right, folks, buckle up, because we're diving into scenario number 3, dealing with chronic negativity. Now, don't get me wrong, INFJ are no strangers to the darker side of life. They're often drawn to deep, meaningful conversations and aren't afraid to tackle heavy topics. But there's a big difference between having occasional heart-to-hearts and being stuck in a perpetual storm cloud of negativity. Imagine you're an INFJ and you've got a friend or family member who's always complaining. I'm not talking about the occasional vent session, we all need those sometimes. I'm talking about someone who sees the world through poop-colored glasses. Every conversation turns into a gripe fest. Every silver lining has a cloud. It's like they're allergic to anything positive or uplifting. At first, the INFJ might try to be the ray of sunshine in this person's life. They'll listen patiently, offer words of encouragement, maybe even try to help problem solve. But as time goes on, it starts to feel like they're trying to bail out the Titanic with a teaspoon. No matter how much positivity they inject, it gets swallowed up by this black hole of negativity. And here's the kicker: INFJ are like emotional sponges. They soak up the feelings of those around them, whether they want to or not. So, being around all this negativity, it's like forcing them to wear a lead vest 24/7. It weighs them down, drains their energy, and starts to mess with their own outlook on life. But it's not just about feeling bummed out. This constant exposure to negativity can actually mess with an INFJ's core values. They're idealists at heart, always looking for ways to make the world a better place. When they're constantly bombarded with doom and gloom, it can start to chip away at their hope and optimism. It's like watching a candle flicker in a storm. They're fighting to keep that flame of positivity alive, but the negative winds just keep blowing. So what happens next? Well, the INFJ might try to steer conversations in a more positive direction. They might suggest activities or topics that bring out the best in people. But if their efforts are constantly shot down or met with more complaints, that's when they start to pull back. It's not that they don't care, it's that they care too much. They realize that if they don't protect their own mental and emotional well-being, they won't be able to help anyone, let alone themselves. And that's when the door slam starts to look tempting. It's not about being mean or unsupportive. It's about self-preservation. It's the INFJ recognizing that they can't set themselves on fire to keep someone else warm, especially when that someone seems determined to stay cold. 4. When they're caught in toxic or manipulative relationships. Strap in, folks, because we're about to tackle a heavy one: toxic and manipulative relationships. Now, you might be thinking, who in their right mind would stay in a toxic relationship? But here's the thing about INFJ: they often see the best in people, sometimes to their own detriment. They're like emotional archaeologists, always digging for the good buried beneath the surface. Picture this: an INFJ finds themselves in a relationship, romantic or platonic, with someone who's, well, let's just say not exactly winning any Person of the Year awards. Maybe this person is manipulative, always twisting situations to make the INFJ feel guilty or responsible for their happiness. Or perhaps they're emotionally abusive, using the INFJ's empathy and sensitivity against them. At first, the INFJ might not even realize what's happening. They're so focused on understanding and helping the other person that they don't see the red flags waving right in front of their face. They make excuses. Oh, they're just going through a tough time. Or if I can just love them enough, they'll change. It's like they're trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded, frustrating and ultimately impossible. But here's where it gets tricky. INFJ are all about growth and self-improvement. They believe in second chances, third chances, heck, even 10th chances if they think there's hope. So they might stick around far longer than they should, always holding on to that glimmer of potential they see in the other person. The problem is, this dedication often comes at a steep price. The INFJ starts to lose pieces of themselves. Their self-esteem takes a nosedive. They start doubting their own perceptions and feelings. It's like watching a vibrant, colorful painting slowly fade to gray. They become a shell of their former selves, always walking on eggshells, always trying to keep the peace at the expense of their own well-being. And let me tell you, an INFJ in this situation, it's like watching a caged bird. They're meant to soar, to inspire, to make a difference in the world. But in a toxic relationship, their wings are clipped. They can't fly, can't sing, can't be true to who they are. So what happens when the INFJ finally realizes what's going on? It's like a light bulb moment, but not the fun kind. It's more like realizing you've been wearing your shirt inside out all day, embarrassing, uncomfortable, and a little bit shocking. They start to see the manipulation for what it is. They recognize the toll this relationship has taken on their mental and emotional health. And that's when the door slam becomes not just an option, but a necessity. It's not about revenge or punishment. It's about reclaiming their power, their sense of self. It's about breaking free from the toxic cycle and giving themselves a chance to heal and grow. The door slam in this scenario is often the hardest, but also the most liberating. It's the INFJ saying, enough is enough. I deserve better, and let me tell you, when an INFJ finally puts their foot down, that door doesn't just slam, it bolts shut, gets reinforced with steel, and probably has a moat built around it for good measure. 5. When their values are consistently disregarded or mocked. All right, folks, we're more than halfway through our list and things are getting real. Let's talk about something that hits INFJ right in the gut, having their values disregarded or, even worse, mocked. Now, if you know anything about INFJ, you know that their values aren't just some casual preferences. We're talking core beliefs, the very foundation of who they are as people. Imagine you're an INFJ, and you've got some pretty strong opinions about, say, social justice or environmental issues. These aren't just talking points for you, they're part of your identity, the lens through which you view the world. Now, picture someone in your life who not only disagrees with these values but actively ridicules them. Maybe it's a family member who rolls their eyes every time you bring up climate change, or a friend who makes fun of your efforts to be more ethical in your choices. At first, the INFJ might try to engage in dialogue. They're all about understanding different perspectives, after all. They'll listen patiently, try to explain their point of view, maybe even do some research to back up their beliefs. But what happens when their efforts are met with dismissal or outright mockery? It's like trying to have a heartfelt conversation with a brick wall, frustrating, exhausting, and ultimately pointless. But here's the thing for INFJ, it's not just about winning an argument. It's about feeling understood and respected, even if someone doesn't agree with them. When their values are constantly dismissed or made fun of, it's like a direct attack on their character. It's as if someone's saying, the things you care about most, they're stupid and worthless. And let me tell you, that cuts deep for an INFJ. It's not just hurt feelings we're talking about here. It's a fundamental clash of worldviews, a disconnect that goes right to the core of who they are as a person. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. No matter how hard you try, it's just not going to work. So what happens next? Well, the INFJ might start to withdraw. They'll share less of themselves, keep their opinions to themselves more often. It's like watching a vibrant, passionate person slowly fade into the background. They become quieter, more reserved, always second-guessing whether it's worth speaking up. But here's the kicker: INFJ need to express their values. It's not just a want, it's a need. Bottling up their beliefs and passions, that's like asking them to stop breathing. It goes against everything they are. So when they're in an environment where they constantly feel judged or belittled for their values, it's like slowly suffocating. And that's when the door slam starts to look appealing. It's not about being close-minded or unable to handle disagreement. It's about protecting the very essence of who they are. It's the INFJ saying, I won't compromise my integrity or dim my light just to make you comfortable. The door slam in this scenario is like the INFJ planting their flag in the ground. It's them saying, these are my values, this is who I am, and I won't apologize for it. And let me tell you, when an INFJ stands up for their beliefs like this, it's a sight to behold. That door doesn't just slam, it becomes a statement, a boundary that says, if you can't respect what I stand for, you don't get to be part of my life. 6. When they're constantly misunderstood or invalidated. All right, folks, we're nearing the end of our list, but don't think for a second that we're running out of steam. Let's dive into scenario number 6, being constantly misunderstood or invalidated. Now, if you've ever met an INFJ, you know they're not exactly an open book. They're more like a complex novel written in a language only they fully understand. Picture this: you're an INFJ, and you're trying to explain how you feel about something. Maybe it's a deep-seated fear, a passionate belief, or just a gut feeling you can't shake. You pour your heart out, carefully choosing each word to capture the essence of your thoughts. And what do you get in response? A blank stare, a dismissive shrug, or worse, someone telling you that you're overreacting or being too sensitive. It's like trying to describe colors to someone who's only ever seen in black and white. You're talking about subtle shades and intricate patterns, and they're just not getting it. At first, the INFJ might try to explain things differently. They'll use metaphors, share personal stories, maybe even resort to interpretive dance if they think it'll help. Okay, maybe not that last one, but you get the idea. But what happens when these efforts are met with constant misunderstanding or invalidation? It's like shouting into the void, exhausting, frustrating, and ultimately futile. The INFJ starts to feel like they're speaking a foreign language in a country where no one understands them. And here's the thing for INFJ, being understood isn't just a nice to have. It's a fundamental need. They crave deep, meaningful connections where they can share their true selves without fear of judgment or dismissal. When they're constantly misunderstood or invalidated, it's like a constant paper cut on their soul. Small but incredibly painful, and it just keeps happening over and over. So what's an INFJ to do in this situation? Well, at first they might try to adapt. They'll simplify their thoughts, hold back on sharing their deeper feelings, maybe even try to change who they are to fit in better. But let me tell you, an INFJ pretending to be someone they're not, that's like watching a swan try to act like a duck. It's awkward, uncomfortable, and just plain wrong. As time goes on, the INFJ might start to withdraw. They'll share less and less of themselves, keeping their thoughts and feelings bottled up inside. It's like watching a vibrant, colorful person slowly fade to gray. They become quieter, more reserved, always second-guessing whether it's worth opening up. But here's the kicker: INFJ need to express themselves. It's not just a want, it's a fundamental part of who they are. Bottling up their thoughts and feelings, that's like asking them to stop breathing. It goes against everything they are. So when they're in an environment where they constantly feel misunderstood or invalidated, it's like slowly suffocating. And that's when the door slam starts to look tempting. It's not about being dramatic or oversensitive. It's about protecting their emotional and mental well-being. It's the INFJ saying, "I deserve to be understood and accepted for who I am." The door slam in this scenario is like the INFJ drawing a line in the sand. It's them saying, "This is who I am, and if you can't make an effort to understand me, then maybe we shouldn't be in each other's lives." And let me tell you, when an INFJ makes this decision, it's not taken lightly. That door doesn't just slam, it becomes a fortress, protecting the INFJ's authentic self from those who couldn't or wouldn't try to understand them. 7. When they're overwhelmed by emotional vampires. Last but definitely not least, we've got scenario number 7, dealing with emotional vampires. Now, I'm not talking about the sparkly kind you see in movies. I'm talking about people who drain the life force right out of you, leaving you feeling exhausted, empty, and emotionally wrung out. Imagine you're an INFJ, known for your empathy and ability to understand others on a deep level. These qualities make you a magnet for people who need emotional support. At first, it feels good to be needed, to be able to help others navigate their feelings and problems. But what happens when this becomes a one-way street? Picture a friend who's always in crisis mode. Every conversation turns into a therapy session, with them unloading all their problems onto you. Or maybe it's a family member who's constantly stirring up drama, pulling you into their emotional tornadoes. At first, the INFJ is all in, ready to listen, offer advice, and provide support. But as time goes on, it starts to feel like they're trying to fill a bottomless pit. And here's the thing: INFJ are like emotional sponges. They absorb the feelings of those around them, whether they want to or not. So being around these emotional vampires, it's like being stuck in a leaky boat, constantly bailing out water just to stay afloat. It's exhausting, it's draining, and it starts to take a serious toll on their own mental and emotional health. But it doesn't stop there. INFJ have a tendency to prioritize others' needs over their own. They'll give and give until there's nothing left, always putting themselves last. It's like watching someone try to pour from an empty cup. No matter how hard they try, there's just nothing left to give. So what happens next? Well, the INFJ might try to set boundaries. They'll limit their availability, try to steer conversations towards more positive topics, maybe even suggest that their friends seek professional help. But what happens when these boundaries are ignored, or worse, met with guilt trips and manipulation? That's when the INFJ starts to feel trapped. They're caught between their desire to help and their need for self-preservation. It's like being stuck on a hamster wheel. No matter how fast they run, they're not getting anywhere. They become exhausted, resentful, and start to lose touch with their own needs and feelings. And that's when the door slam becomes not just an option, but a necessity. It's not about being selfish or uncaring. It's about recognizing that they can't pour from an empty cup. It's the INFJ saying, "I need to take care of myself too." The door slam in this scenario is like the INFJ putting on their own oxygen mask first. It's them recognizing that they can't help anyone if they're emotionally and mentally drained. And when an INFJ makes this decision, that door doesn't just slam, it becomes a shield, protecting their energy and emotional well-being from those who would drain them dry. Now, let's wrap this up with some final thoughts. The INFJ door slam isn't something that happens on a whim. It's a last resort, a self-preservation tactic used when all other options have been exhausted. It's not about being cold or unforgiving, it's about setting necessary boundaries and protecting their own well-being. For INFJ, the decision to door slam someone is often preceded by a long period of internal struggle. They'll agonize over it, weighing the pros and cons, always hoping for a better outcome. But when they finally make the decision, it's usually final. The door doesn't just close, it locks, bolts, and gets reinforced with steel. But here's the thing, the door slam isn't just about shutting someone out. It's also about opening new doors for the INFJ. It's about creating space for healthier relationships, for personal growth, for rediscovering their authentic selves. It's a chance for them to rebuild, to heal, and to surround themselves with people who truly appreciate and understand them. So, the next time you hear about an INFJ door slamming someone, remember it's not an act of cruelty. It's an act of self-love, of setting boundaries, of saying I matter too. And in a world that often takes advantage of their kindness and empathy, sometimes that door slam is exactly what an INFJ needs to do to protect their heart and soul. In the end, the INFJ door slam is a powerful reminder that even the most compassionate and understanding people have their limits. It's a testament to the strength and resilience of INFJ, who are willing to make tough decisions to protect their inner world and stay true to themselves. And that, my friends, is something we can all learn from, regardless of our personality type.